Giving all praises and glory to our power Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, Bahashem Machakudash. The honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and wherever you may be, whoever you may be, to you I say Shalom, Yeshua, Shalom. Alright, we're jumping into the book of Deuteronomy chapter 16. We're going to start to move this forward, being that we have the uploading of the 12 tribes of Israel, the prophecies concerning them in Genesis, the 49th chapter. Also, a major part of that is Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter. So we're going to move both of them along at the same time, and hopefully they meet at the head. So as of right now, we're in chapter 16, which actually we covered chapter 16, but I actually deleted it by mistake. Ain't the first time I did that. But yeah, I deleted it by mistake. So I want to make sure I double back into it in 16 and not skip forward to 17 without actually doing and uploading 16. So, and we're going to read this in the NLT, which will be at the bottom half of the screen, and that top half there is set aside as the KJV, but we're going to read the NLT. So it says, Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. Verse 1, in honor of the Lord Yahweh your power, celebrate the Passover each year in the early spring in the month of Abib, for that was the month in which the Lord Yahweh your power brought you out of Egypt by night, which that's what it's going into right here, back into Exodus chapter 12. Verses 1 and 2 leads back here to Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. While the Israelites were still in the land of Egypt, the Lord Yahweh gave the following instructions to Moses and Aaron. From now on, this month will be the first month of the year for you. Goes to show you that, because the whole world celebrates what a so-called new year, which, well, the so-called new year for the world has just passed, because we're now in the month of January. And the whole world does it, which is basically open rebellion against, the ways of the Lord. But they're not his people, so what can you expect? So it says, from now on, this month will be the first month of the year for you. Announce to the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each family must choose a lamb or a young goat for a sacrifice, one animal for each household. If a family is too small to eat the whole animal, let them share with another family in the neighborhood. Divide the animal according to the size of each family and how much they can eat. Alright. So, let me read another one. The animal you select must be a year old. But it must be a 1-year-old male, either a sheep or a goat, with no defects. Alright. So, yeah. So that goes back there. And bear with me one moment. Alright, so verse 2 says, your Passover sacrifice, let me make sure we're taking. Okay, your Passover sacrifice may be from either the flock or the herd, and it must be sacrificed to the Lord Yahweh your power at the designated place of worship, the place he chooses for his name to be honored. Eat it with bread made without yeast. For 7 days the bread you eat must be made without yeast, as when you escaped from Egypt in such a hurry. Eat this bread, the bread of suffering, so that as long as you live, you will remember the day you departed from Egypt. Now, in the KJV, it says unleavened bread, which is basically bread without, as it said in the NLT, without yeast, because it's the yeast that makes the dough rise. Okay, so you're not supposed to have any of that in your household for the whole week. Of course, definitely the Passover night, but in that, then the feast of unleavened bread, which is that following week. Okay, the so-called flat bread, or some people call it tortilla bread or whatever, but you get the point, right? Sometimes in the Bible it would be known as a cake, because there's different forms of that, but sometimes I believe it's also known as a cake. But yeah, you get the point, the flat bread. Okay, so, and the reason for that is because it takes time for a dough to rise, and we didn't have time. All right, this was with our clothes on our feet, staff in hand, eating it, the Passover meal in haste, because the Lord was about to make a move. He's about to send that death angel through Egypt. Okay, so we didn't have time to to let the dough rise and then bake the dough and then eat, because the whole Passover night would have passed over already. Okay, so the unleavened bread, because we had to move in haste. Let no yeast be found in any house through your land for those 7 days, which is what we just mentioned. Excuse me. And when you sacrifice the Passover lamb on the evening of the first day, do not let any of the meat remain until the next morning, because you're supposed to eat all of it, which you only need enough for yourself and whatever size that particular household is going to be. And as we just also read in Exodus, if there's not enough, then 2 households can join together, but it should be enough for everyone to eat that Passover meal and eat it all and nothing left. Okay, because you don't need extras. It's not some savory meal to be held over for 2 or 3 more days or whatever. And also, eating it with the bitter herbs. And when you sacrifice the Passover lamb on the evening of the first day, do not let any of the meat remain until the next morning. You may not sacrifice the Passover in just any of the towns that the Lord Yahweh your power is giving you. You must offer it only at the designated place of worship, the place Yahweh your power chooses for his name to be honored. Sacrifice it there in the evening as the sun goes down on the anniversary of your exodus from Egypt. Yeah. So everything should be done by the time the sun goes down, because you're now entering into a holy day. And we're speaking about ancient times, because in these times today, in real time, it's impossible to keep it perfect. Maybe you had to work all day long and you had to come home and actually there was nothing else to eat, but you're hungry, and you may actually have to cook something. You try not to do that, but there may be an occasion where it just happens. Okay, but you got to eat. So we're talking about the ancient time. Back then, there was actually no excuse at all. Okay, 0 excuses back then. All right, so upon the sun going down, we have now entered into that pretty much that holy day as the Passover, and then the following week will be the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Roast the lamb and eat it in the place Yahweh your power chooses. And just that alone, I mean, we have no idea what these people are doing with our food before we receive it. So yeah, we rehearse the righteous acts, like it says. Then you may go back to your tents in the morning. For the next 6 days, you may not eat any bread made with yeast. And that's the second time I believe it said that. On the 7th day, proclaim another holy day in honor of the Lord Yahweh your power, and no more work may be done on that day. So the first day and the 7th day. All right, goes on to say the festival of harvest. Count off 7 weeks from when you first begin to cut the grain at the time of harvest. Then celebrate the festival. I didn't mean that was okay. Then celebrate the festival of harvest to honor the Lord Yahweh your power. Bring him a voluntary offering in proportion to the blessings you have received from him, because of what we just read here. All right, 7 weeks from to begin to cut the grain at the time of harvest. All right, because the time of harvest will be the ingathering of your yield. This is a time to celebrate before Yahweh your power at the designated place of worship he would choose for his name to be honored. Celebrate with your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, the Levites from your towns, and the foreigners, which are also Israelites, because no heathen will partake in this. Orphans and widows who live among you. All right. Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, so be careful to obey all these decrees. Yeah, because you had to do certain things a certain way, as you were in Egypt. Like we mentioned, the first, this is going to be the first day, the first month for you now, because you have to understand, when we were in the Egyptian captivity, we have to observe time according to the Egyptians, which was like a 10-day week. Okay, so the 10-day week, the years, however they were observing these things, the days, because we were in captivity for all those years. Now we've come out of captivity, and there's a new way being instituted from us, from the most major things all the way down to the most small and minute things, because this is the order of the Lord to his people. All right. Festival of Shelters. You must, and notice there's precepts. Leviticus 23, Numbers 29, up above was the same thing, because it leads back to these same topics here.
Somebody just called me.
Oh. All right, anyways, you must observe the festival of shelters for 7 days at the end of the harvest season. After the grain has been threshed and the grapes have been pressed. So after the grain has been threshed, so we take it to the threshing floor, and the grapes have been pressed, because one of the most major things that we will use with the grapes is to make wine. It says that's when you're going to observe the festival of shelters for 7 days, which I believe it goes by another name. Verse 13 KJV. Yep, Feast of Tabernacles. All right. Yep. After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine. All right. So festival of shelters or Feast of Tabernacles. This festival will be a happy time of celebrating with your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows from your towns. For 7 days you must celebrate this festival to honor the Lord Yahweh your power at the place he chooses. For it is he who blesses you with the bountiful harvest and gives you success in all your work. This festival will be a time of great joy for all. All right, it goes to show you that we have holy days that are meant to have, be a festive time. Not no daggone 4th of July and Christmas and stuff like that. Okay, a Purim. Okay, that's another one. So yeah, we have, even the one they call Hanukkah. All right, that was a rejoicing, the rededication of the temple. They would send the gifts and so on and so forth. So we have high holy days that are solemn, but assemblies or whatever. But we also have those that are meant to, be a joyful time for the nation. All right. Now, I believe there's also called the Feast of Booths too, according to that one. But let's keep going. It says, verse 15 says, for 7 days you must celebrate this festival to honor the Lord Yahweh your power at the place he chooses. For it is he who blesses you with the bountiful harvest and gives you success in all your work. This festival will be a time of great joy for all. Each year, every man in Israel must celebrate these 3 festivals. The festival of unleavened bread, which is the 7 days, after the Passover, the night of the Passover, then the following week. Festival of unleavened bread, the festival of harvest, and the festival of shelters. Excuse me. On each of these occasions, all men must appear before the Lord Yahweh your power at the place he chooses, but they must not appear before the Lord Yahweh without a gift for him. And that plays itself out major around the time period of 70 AD. Okay, because that was a tactic that was used against us by Titus. He knew that Israelites would be flocking to Jerusalem, and he allowed them to come in, but he didn't allow them to leave. So he basically barricaded them as they came in, and eventually starved them out, and built the trenches and used the siege machines and all these different things. Which is slightly another topic, but I was mentioning the fact that we have to report back to Jerusalem these 3 times in a year. And actually reads, let me get 16 in the KJV. 3 times in the year shall all thy males, okay, it's very important for the men to come. It was mandatory for the men. All thy males appear before the Lord Yahweh thy power in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord Yahweh empty, coming with bearing gifts, sacrifices, or whatever the case may be. All must give as they are able, according to the blessings given to them by the Lord Yahweh your power. And he was obviously providing for us plenty. So no one was going to come empty-handed. Even if you were not doing as great as the next man, you still have something that you were able to give, and it was commanded not to come empty-handed anyways. All right, it goes on to say, justice for the people. Appoint judges and officials for yourselves from each of your tribes and all the towns the Lord Yahweh your power is giving you. They must judge the people fairly. You must never twist justice or show partiality. Never accept a bribe, for bribes blind the eyes of the wise and corrupt the decision of the godly. So yes, it says appoint judges and officials, basically, which brings, order to certain things. All right, in all the towns. It says they must judge the people fairly. That's why it goes on to say you must never twist justice or show partiality. You can't favor someone over another. In a case, we'll just say the court of law, for lack of better words. All right, you may be fond of this person and not the other person, and you can't sway the decision to be made in the favor of the person that you're fond of simply because you're not fond of the other person. Also, it says never accept a bribe, meaning you don't for those that are set up in this leadership position as a judge. All right, don't be accepting no bribes to also sway the decision, on the party, that bribed you with whatever. For bribes blind the eyes of the wise and corrupt the decisions of the godly. I believe it reads different in the KJV. Thou shalt not wrest judgment, meaning to wrestle with. Thou shalt not respect persons, you see, neither take a gift. For a gift doeth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous, you see. And it's beautiful because it says a gift doeth blind the eyes of the wise, because it could have been a very wise man set up as a judge, over matters. But because he wasn't able to hold himself from being, from taking the purse, taking the bag, the wisdom goes out the window and he makes a foolish decision, which is by way of him being bribed. Let true justice prevail, so you may live and occupy the land that the Lord Yahweh your power is giving you, which is going into the point of the giving of the law, right? Standards for us. You must never set up a wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build for the Lord Yahweh your power. Okay, and there was a reason why he reminded you of that. In the KJV, it says, "Thou shalt not plant thee a grove." What is a grove? It is an altar surrounded by trees. That's a grove. Okay, what they got, the 40, 50, whatever, however big foot owl statue over there, is that in Cali? I think it is. I forget where it is, but that you got the 40-foot owl statue, and it's where off in the woods, surrounded by trees, and it sits on an altar. So an altar is just that, a stone surface, usually put together by stones. Modern day altars are what in the churches. All right, you got the pulpit, they call it. Well, that's an altar, but it's not to the God of the Bible. They think it is, but it's not. So a grove, but the ancient, as far as the chapters breaking it down, it would be, probably a stone pavement, made by stones or whatever, however the case. Basically stones, with an idol reared up, and is surrounded by trees as, being hidden. That's what a grove is. So thou shalt not plant thee a grove of any trees near unto the altar, you see, of the Lord Yahweh thy power, which thou shalt make thee. You must never set up a wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build for the Lord Yahweh your power, and never set up sacred pillars for worship, for Yahweh your power hates them. See, in the KJV says, never shalt thou set thee up any image. Basically, whatever it may be, going back to Deuteronomy chapter 4. All right, if you see the sun, the moon, the stars, and even the angels, if whatever the case may be, and you be given to worship them, don't do it. All right, I gave those things to the nations of the earth to do those things. Let them worship, things that are not, things that are real, but not like real powers, real God. I gave you, I took you as a people to myself, and you worship me, the real God. And I'm gonna grab Asherah pole before we close out. An Asherah pole was a sacred wooden symbol. Actually, there's a picture right there. Often a carved post or stylized tree representing the ancient Canaanite mother goddess Asherah. All right, associated with fertility, life in the sea, placed at religious sites alongside altars to El or Baal, and consistently condemned in the Hebrew Bible as idolatrous, idol worship. Going back to what Exodus 20. You should not have no other gods before me. It's the first thing said. And he goes on to say, thou with jealous power. Also the scripture that says, all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord created the heavens and the earth. I believe that's in Psalms 96, if I'm correct. Leading to repeated commands for Israelites to cut them down to worship. It says Yahweh, but his name was Yahweh exclusively. Yep. Oh, there's more. An Asherah pole is a sacred tree or pole that stood near Canaanite religious, and where were we at? In the lands of Canaan. All right. Well, once we took them over, no longer the land of Canaan. Canaanite religious locations to honor the goddess Asherah. The relation of the literary references to Asherah and archaeological finds of Judean pillar figurine has engendered a literature of debate. Okay. And actually that one was the most closest to it. You see this guy here. I'm gonna pull him up. That thing right there, his guy. Oh, that's supposed to go down. So that thing on the right side, as far as I know, that's the one closest to it, but I could be wrong. Oh, here's another one. See, it's basically an idol, and this will be at an altar. And these Canaanites had these altars and stuff. Because remember, in previous chapters, the Lord says to what? Break down all their altars and so on and so forth. To burn them up with fire, all these different things. Break up their their idols and pretty much ash them, burn them up. Okay, so yeah, so you would see this, in one of those Canaanite groves there, an altar, this thing here, and to be hidden, surrounded by trees. So we were commanded to destroy these things and not to fall into worship after these things, because we serve our power. So that was the end of Deuteronomy chapter 16. Lord willing, you will edify the next thing. I'm going to say shalom.